That person who keeps putting you down? They're not doing it by accident. That friend who plays victim every single time? There's a reason for that too. Toxic people don't just happen. They're built by wounds, by fear, and by patterns so deep they don't even see them anymore. And once you understand the why behind their behavior, you'll never be caught off guard again. I used to be exactly the person these tactics worked on until I understood the psychology behind them. Here's what changed everything. Here's the truth before we go deep. Toxic people act toxic because, on some level, it works for them. It gets them control. It gets them attention. It protects them from the one thing they're terrified of: being vulnerable. That's the core. But underneath that, there are 5 specific types, each one driven by a different wound, a different fear, a completely different dark strategy. And here's the part nobody talks about. Some of these types are almost impossible to spot until it's already too late. Let's change that right now. The 5 types. Type 1, the controller. Hidden psychology, fear of powerlessness. Controllers need to manage everything: conversations, decisions, people. But here's what's actually happening underneath. Every controller you've ever met was once someone with zero control over their own life. Maybe they grew up in a home where chaos was the default, where they never knew what mood their parent would be in, whether today was safe or not. So their brain learned one thing really fast: if I control everything around me, I stay safe. That strategy worked when they were 8 years old. Now they're 34 and it looks like manipulation. Here's a scene you might recognize. You make a plan to see your friends. Perfectly normal. But suddenly there's a guilt trip. Then a passive comment. Then a cold "fine, do whatever you want" that clearly means the opposite. And by the time the night rolls around, you're apologizing for wanting to spend time with your own friends. That's not conflict. That's a mechanism built from a terrified child who never got to feel safe any other way. What they use: gaslighting, moving goalposts, rewriting conversations that already happened. They make you doubt your own perception, so you always need them to define what's real. The control never slips because reality never does either. Type 2, the victim. Hidden psychology, weaponized helplessness. The chronic victim looks harmless. But make no mistake. The person who is always suffering, always wronged, always in some kind of crisis is running one of the most psychologically effective manipulations that exists. Here's how it plays out in real life. You tell them you can't lend money this time. 2 hours later, you're getting messages about how you've abandoned them. How nobody ever cares. How they don't know what they're going to do. And somehow you end up apologizing for protecting yourself. The helplessness is the weapon. When you position yourself as helpless, other people feel obligated. They can't say no without guilt. They can't hold you accountable without feeling like a monster. Where does this start? Usually in a childhood where vulnerability was the only currency that worked. Where being strong got you ignored, but breaking down got you held. So the brain hardwired a simple equation: suffering equals love. Strength equals being alone. Most of them aren't doing this consciously. But your nervous system still pays the price. Type 3, the narcissist. Hidden psychology, the false self. This word gets thrown around so much it's almost lost its meaning. But let me tell you what's actually happening inside a narcissist, because it's not what most people think. On the outside, arrogance, entitlement, an unshakable belief that they're simply better than you. On the inside, a fragile, terrified person who never built a real sense of self. Here's the psychology. At some point in childhood, a narcissist learned that their real self with all its flaws, needs, fears was unacceptable. Maybe a parent only gave love when they performed perfectly. Maybe they were shamed for being ordinary. So they built a false self. Perfect. Superior. Untouchable. And they spend every single day protecting that false self. Which is why even the gentlest criticism feels like a full attack. Because it threatens the only identity they've ever known. The cycle they run, love bombing, devaluing, discarding, is completely predictable once you see it. First they put you on a pedestal because you make them feel special. Then they tear you down because somewhere along the way, you reminded them of their own inadequacy. Then they replace you because they always need a fresh source to fill the void. This cycle isn't random. It is completely predictable. And knowing that is everything. Type 4, the passive-aggressor. Hidden psychology, anger that learned to hide. You know that specific feeling where someone says something perfectly nice and you still feel attacked somehow? That's this. Sarcastic compliments. Silent treatment for no stated reason. Agreeing to do something and then just never doing it. A joke that lands just a little too sharp, and when you react, they say, "It was just a joke. Why are you so sensitive? Now you're the problem. You look unstable." They walked away completely clean. Here's why they operate like this: they grew up somewhere that made direct anger dangerous. Maybe showing frustration meant getting screamed at. Maybe expressing emotion meant being mocked. So anger had to go underground. The result is someone who feels hostility constantly but has never been allowed to say it plainly. So it leaks out sideways. Through tone. Through timing. Through things they agreed to do and quietly never did. This is called covert aggression. They get to be hostile and maintain total deniability. Every single time. And if you push back, you become the irrational one in the room. Type 5, the chaos creator. Hidden psychology, a nervous system addicted to intensity. This one will change the way you see people permanently. Some people seem to attract drama everywhere they go. Every week, a new crisis. A new enemy. A new disaster. And somehow they're always right in the middle of it, wide-eyed, asking, why does this keep happening to me? But here's the truth, it keeps happening because they need it to. This isn't bad luck. This is neuroscience. When someone grows up in a home filled with conflict, unpredictability, and constant emotional intensity, that becomes their baseline. That's what normal feels like in their nervous system. And when life actually gets calm, when things are genuinely fine, it doesn't feel peaceful to them. It feels like the quiet before something terrible. So they create the fire themselves. They say the thing that starts the argument. They exaggerate until a small situation becomes a full crisis. They use triangulation, dragging a third person in to amplify the conflict, create jealousy, pit people against each other. And suddenly a two-person situation has 5 people involved, nobody knows what's real, and the chaos creator is standing right at the center, finally feeling regulated. They're not doing it to destroy you. They're doing it because their nervous system doesn't know how to exist without fire. That understanding doesn't excuse any of it. But it explains everything. I know some of you watching right now have a specific face in your head. And I want you to hear this. Understanding why someone is toxic does not mean you have to stay. You can have compassion for someone's wounds and still walk away from their behavior. Those two things are not in conflict. Now, and I say this gently, if you're being really honest with yourself, you might recognize a flicker of one of these patterns in you too. Most of us do, in some form or another. That's not a condemnation. That's just awareness. Because here's the real gift of everything you just learned: it's not about them. It's about you. The moment you understand the psychology, the games stop working. The guilt trips lose their grip. The gaslighting bounces off. The love bombing doesn't blind you anymore. You stop shrinking yourself to manage someone else's ego. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And when you see clearly, you choose clearly. That kind of clarity isn't just knowledge. That's freedom. If this video gave you even one moment of clarity about someone in your life, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Hit like if it landed. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing clearly. I'll see you in the next one.